People's champion, champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand.
Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start Justice here with JFJ. My name is Mikkel Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at JFJ.
Now, we are going to be discussing two topics for today. We've heard a lot of the alarming situations happening in the media landscape regarding sexual violence against women and girls, but we're going to be broadening the scope just a tad to focus on children generally. And that's the first half of the show. Towards the end of the show, we're going to be looking at some utterances made on the political platform by Member of Parliament Daryl Vaz. And to discuss those comments, we will be joined by Glenroy Murray, Executive Director of Equality for All Foundation. All right. So first topic, the substantive one, is focusing on sexual violence against our children. And then towards the end, we're going to be hearing from Equality for All Foundation, formerly J Flag. All right. But I will turn over to Jade in terms of the did you know before I speak very briefly on the week that was.
All right, so our Did You Know for today comes from our Sexual Offences Act, and it speaks to grooming of children. So in our Sexual Offences Act, we have an offense that speaks to spending time with a child for specific reasons. So if it is that you are spending time with a child in order to get that child in a position where you can commit a sexual offense against that child, it's called sexual grooming, and that's under Section 9 of our Sexual Offences Act. And that section, if found guilty under it, you can face up to 15 years in prison on a conviction in the circuit court. So it's a serious offense that you are convicted for in the Supreme Court. That's sexual grooming. For our trivia question for today, we asked, what is the formal name for the agency responsible for care and protection of children in Jamaica? So the agency that's responsible for care and protection has a name now, and it had a name previously. So if you can tell us that previous name, you can win that trivia question. You can respond on our Instagram. You can send a WhatsApp message to 2397583, or you can respond on YouTube, on Nationwide, or on JFJ's YouTube channel.
Alrighty, so last week was a good week for justice in this country. We realized and saw that justice was delayed, but thankfully not denied for Mario Dean. So following what again can only be described as an agonizing 11-year wait, we had convictions being secured for the three officers who were implicated and charged for manslaughter in Dean's death. And JFJ, we welcomed the ruling in this particular case here. And, you know, we just have to applaud the strength, the resilience of Mercia Fraser, the mother of Mario Dean. You know, the outcome of the trial is certainly some move, for lack of a better terminology, towards closure for Miss Fraser. Now, we have to applaud, for example, the efforts of the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, and their work, because as far back as 2014, they had made the recommendation that the officers ought to be charged for manslaughter. I believe Indicom was the one who had put forward the charges, because remember at that time they had certain powers before it was stripped following going to the Privy Council, I believe in 2017, 2018, thereabout. So charges were actually laid against the officers for manslaughter. And I want to emphasize that though the officers weren't the ones who committed the unlawful death of Mario Dean, it really is speaking about their duty of care and the breach of that duty of care in Mario Dean's death. And we are thankful for the efforts of the prosecutors from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. But though we applaud their efforts, we can't ignore the systemic failure in this particular case. When we did a rough count in our office, there were at least 18 instances of the trial being delayed. And we can acknowledge that COVID was a part of it. I believe in about September 2021, as a result of COVID being here, affecting, countries globally, justice systems globally. September 2021, there was a delay in the trial to April 2022. So we are cognizant of that. But there were several instances of administrative failures and the matter of the jury and how that was managed that caused further delay. For example, I believe in one of the dates that was set, the psychiatric evaluation report was not there. There were other reports that were missing that caused a delay in the trial commencing. We do acknowledge that the defense, they have a right to a jury trial, and they had opted for a jury trial instead of a judge-only trial. We acknowledge those things. But when you look, for example, at the lack of jury summons being served in several instances, that ought not to have happened. I recall personally speaking to the head of the police division down by St. James Court, Circuit Court, St. James Police Station, rather, and I was advised and publicly stated that the jury list was not sent in time for the summons to be issued. When we spoke to the Supreme Court, we were told that no, the list was actually sent down. So, when you have 500 jury summons being, issued or ready rather, but only a few being served, then it's really is an egregious act on the justice system. It was just ridiculous and ought not to have happened. And I think we have to look on how best we are fixing the system. We heard from Justice Minister, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, that the Jury Act will be reviewed. We heard that something was sent to Cabinet. Since that announcement, nothing. At what point do we say to our legislators that we have to move from the announcements to action? Nothing. How can you not have jury summons being actioned and so on in time? I recall Justice Bertram Morrison making an appropriate statement that what was happening was a national disgrace. And until we look within and fix those systems, then the same thing will happen. We have Matthew Lee, similarly, who was killed in 2013. Trial should have commenced. I believe last month it was Jade. When our team went to observe proceedings, we were advised that no, trial delayed until January 2026. No, Matthew Lee was killed in 2013. And I'm sure January 2026 you may hear something else. We have to fix the system, and especially when the state is the perpetrator, there is a greater level of accountability that we must demand. And as citizens, stop going to your doctor saying that you're sick, not to turn up for jury duty. We can't be lamenting every day about the challenges in our society, yet we fail to play a role. We have to do better as citizens as well. And to those employers who fail to give your staff time to serve on jury, you're breaking the law. And I would really urge the employees to report you all. And I would urge the state to look on what those penalties are So if an employer breaches it, they can be held to some account. We have to send some signal if we want justice to be advanced in our country. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So we are discussing sexual violence, but some workable solutions. And I say workable because, Jade, I think every time, unfortunately, some devastating act occurs, especially where a child is involved, we sound the alarm, as we should as a society. And last week I saw ministers standing in protest. And the thought came to me, why are they there? What is the status of the amendments that civil society we have been calling for? We're protesting, yes, because we have to say enough is enough. But when is enough in Parliament? When is enough for us as citizens to also release and relieve ourselves of some of our own biases, where we're blaming women for their own action? When is enough? What are the solutions? Because some of the solutions I heard personally, I kept asking myself, what are some of those legislative changes that we want? We use the broad language, abstract. Laws need to be changed. And I kept asking myself, when it comes to children, what laws are we talking about? What are the specific amendments? How are we holding ourselves accountable as citizens? How are we holding our parliamentarians accountable when they go to Parliament every Tuesday? A significant number of them not turning up for the laws to be changed. I listened to the Minister of Gender making reference to the Joint Select Committee on the Domestic Violence Act, and I asked myself, didn't JFJ write the minister asking for an update, which we never received, because only 2 sittings were held? When is enough? And what are those workable solutions? So we're going to be joined by Joe Crawford, the Executive Director of E4Life, and Judith Wedderburn, a women's right advocate who I admire personally. They will be on the show.
Well, they're both on, but we're going to take the break, and when we come back, we'll ask them to speak.
Yeah, thank you.
The mission of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs includes revising Jamaica's legal and constitutional infrastructure and accelerating the pace of reform. The time by the MLCA is
1:15.
Lace up and get ready for a run to remember through the lush True Juice orchards in Buckwalk. It's the 10th annual True Juice 5K Run Walk, Sunday, June 8, 2025. Let's make this 10th anniversary bigger and better as we raise funds for the Linstead Hospital. It's going to be special with exciting surprises in store. Register now at TrueJuice5K.com. Entry fee only $3,000. Each participant will receive a free 5K t-shirt. Follow at True Juice on Instagram for more details.
Fairview Medical and Dental and Fairview Beachside Medical, the leading health centers, operate 24/7 with round-the-clock ambulance, emergency, and inpatient services, with specialties in areas like primary healthcare, pediatrics, cardiology, maternity OBGYN, podiatry, chiropractic care, and orthopedics. They're ready to tackle your illnesses. Visit Suite Number 5, Fairview Office Park, Alice Eldemire Drive, Montego Bay. Telephone 876-979-8589. And Fairview Beachside Medical, Unit Number 14, Sunshine Village, West End Road, Negril, Westmoreland. Telephone 876-536-1199.
Football fans, it's the clash to determine Europe's king. When Inter Milan battles PSG in the final of the UEFA Champions League, live on the big screen at Carib 5. Join us on Saturday, May 31 at 2 p.m. for the ultimate match day experience. Brought to you by the Amber Group, Nationwide News Network, and Palace Amusement.
Dumfries, first time!
Big goals, big screens, and big vibes. Tickets are $500 for general admission and $800 for box seats. Limited tickets available, so grab yours today at the Carib 5 box office or online at palaceamusement.com. Feel the thrill of the Champions League final, just like you're in the stadium.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. Our substantive topic for today is speaking to victims of sexual violence and trying to hone in on some solutions, particularly those that concern children. We are joined by Joy Crawford, the Executive Director of E4Life, and we are also joined by Judith Weatherburn, who has been an advocate in women's rights work in Jamaica for quite some time now. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Having me. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Judith.
All right, so clearly we're all friends here. Like,
I think for the first inquiry I would make, we have seen a few recent cases that have brought, or enraged public response. I think firstly, what are your thoughts about some of these matters that have come up from both of you?
Let's start with Joy.
That's fair. Again, thanks, Michael and Jade. My unedited thought is, will it be enough this time around to make real policy and social consciousness change that is required to, one, understand the vulnerability of those who are being preyed on, which is children in particular, or young boys and our girls, or young adolescent women, and then, women in general. What are the factors involved in these heinous crimes? We do see so far in most of the cases, especially in the last couple of months, that males have been the perpetrators. What are we not doing or understanding to address this? That there are a group of men in our country who carry out criminal acts, violent acts, rape, physical abuse, verbal abuse for women and girls and our children, simply because there's this male thought that I am superior, I am in charge, I have power. That's something that we need to have a conversation around, not in competition with women, but just understanding this thing of how toxic masculinity, when it is justified, continue to cause what we're now seeing. So that's my first initial thoughts. What about you, Judith?
Okay, thank you so much, Joy. Thank you for having me, my colleagues at JFJ. I can't tell you how much I admire you both, because you have a serious work, and I believe you always give it your best shot.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to give my best shot. For me, I think we need to find a way to address some important institutional and systemic challenges. But at another level, what Joy just spoke to about the men who we know are the perpetrators against young girls and do all kinds of heinous things to them. And to just acknowledge that deep down in the psyche of these men and some other people as well, those young girls' bodies are not worth anything. They are just objects. And if we go back in our history, it's a long time women's bodies have been objectified, right? And then they use it to sell anything. And no matter if you beat up the woman and throw her through the car, it's just a body. Now, it is more heinous when that body is a girl child. She more than likely is weaker, physically less able to fight the man who is attacking her. And the person may actually be somebody she knows in the family or in the community that she don't have no reason to fear.
Mhm.
So I believe that, Joy, what you just spoke about, a deeper social consciousness about the fact that our women's bodies, particularly and more heinously those of young girls and adult women, are still seen as objects by too many men. And sometimes the women themselves, for you and I know the way they're socialized, they offer themselves, but that's another matter. Right now, I am deeply concerned about men who, in fact, inflict on young girls these most heinous this treatment.
Yeah.
That just leads me to conclude that they either don't care or understand that young girls like us adult women have a right to grow free from the fear of violence. Our communities are not free from the fear of violence, and particularly the way young girls are treated.
Yeah, thank you so much. Joy, back to you. I remember working within the HIV sector and very closely with IFA Life. And, you know, I can only say to the listeners, sometimes when we get the reports of, you know, the work that Eve was doing, and I remember some months I'm locked away in my office, just in tears, of the strength and the resilience of young girls going through things that no child, no person should have experienced. Young girls who were violated by men. Some contracted HIV as a result of that violation. And the men who violated them were their fathers, their uncles, some male figure close to the family or within the community, like the next door neighbor. How do we as a society, Joy Crawford, respond to that reality that most of the male perpetrators are people who are known to the girl child and to the boy child?
I think the challenge we have with this is the othering. We have a culture where we like to be spectators, or we are comfortable being spectators. Or if we're not the one who is actually doing the crime, we're not the one involved in the act, we watch it from a distance or even closer because we're now videotaping it, eh? But there is a disconnect with what is happening. There's a disconnect with the value of the person on the receiving end, and Jane Judith alluded to that. So when I remember sitting in a doctor's office, and I was engaging a woman, and the conversation was around if you were the mother and someone was coming into your house, and with the potential to rape your daughter, what would you do? And the lady said she would allow the rapist to do what they had to do because she's afraid for her life. It's a mother sharing her opinion about a choice she would make. And I had a conversation with her, and she was coming from a point to say, well, the girl can get counseling. She would not be the first one to be raped. And in all of this, she's saying she loves her daughter and she is concerned about what's happening. But she felt as though as long as the child was not murdered and she was not murdered, then they could get past this. That is not unique. There is a disconnect in the minds of our people and in the conversation we're having. So there's this othering that if it not happened to me or it's not happening to me, I am just an observer. It's like an out-of-body experience I'm having. And we have not made the link to say that violence anywhere and everywhere affects all of us. And as long as we continue to justify the violence, as long as we continue to say it's their fault or the girl was wearing something too short, as long as we continue saying that men will be hampered if we have a sexual harassment policy that is in the streets, as long as we keep doing this, then we are not going to have a shift, because our mindset is the neighbor. We have, it's very unfortunate, and let me say, we go out and we support all the families who have lost victims to death. But the truth is, we are a culture that if death does not occur, it's just another rape. It's just another thing. You know, we report it all the time, and that for me is on us as a society, that it's okay for girls to be sexually molested, for there to be incest, for all of this to happen. But if there's no death, it's okay. That for me is almost, I don't know what's the word, but Jamaica need to wake up and say that's what we've done. We have gotten to a point where it's okay. Let me just say one more thing. We're also okay around gender. I also spoke to a mother in my time who has 2 children. And we were discussing the same issue of children being molested. She herself is a survivor of sexual violence. And she says, I would rather my daughter be buggered than my boy. And I'm like, how did you get it? She says, because when a boy is buggered, he's considered, or he's going to become gay, or it's such a greater stigma for him to recover from. But if her daughter is buggered, she can get past it. Those are the ideas that I've had to be working through with our society and our community. So that mindset of the value that Judith alluded to of the human form in the body of a girl, the human form in a young woman, the human form in a child has not been valued. And I think until we have that honest conversation to take our heads out of the sand and to name this barbaric thought and ideology that we have, we are not going to change.
Yeah.
We cannot keep reacting.
Hold that thought for me, Joy. We have to take the break, and we'll pick up in a minute.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is...
It's a warm day in Jamaica, 31 degrees Celsius here in Kingston, also 31 out west in Montego Bay.
Farmore Pharmacy is a family pharmacy that provides prescriptions and a wide variety of over-the-counter medicines and medical supplies. Their friendly and knowledgeable staff are available to answer your questions concerning prescriptions and healthcare. Ask about their loyalty programs. For more information on their offerings, visit Farmore Pharmacy at 42 Main Street, Maypen, or call 876-986-2405. Farmore Pharmacy, giving you far more for less.
What's the standing of the JLP and the PNP in Southeast St. Elizabeth? Southwest St. Elizabeth? Western St. Mary? And where do the parties stand nationally? What's the gap, if any, between Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Opposition Leader Mark Golding? Tune in to Nationwide 90 FM from 6 a.m. on Monday, May 26 for the findings from the latest nationwide Blue Dot polls, powered by Total Tools.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We're discussing the topic of sexual violence against our children. And before the break, Joy Crawford was discussing the importance of raising our social consciousness. And each week I personally preach the same thing. And to you, Judith Wedderburn, you have been leading the charge you have been among those leading the charge, in terms of advocating the rights of women and this particular topic of sexual offenses and how the laws need to change, how culture also needs to change. And last week, there was a protest. And Joy and I spoke briefly, and I asked Joy the question, how many people turned up? And I just want to get your perspective, Judith, that sometimes we're so outraged. Not that the rape necessarily occurred, because unfortunately we hear about these incidents far too often. But a death happened and we're outraged. But are we outraged enough to do something about it? What is your sense of citizen engagement on these issues, and what would you say to citizens to improve and how to channel their outrage into greater demand and how to sustain that demand for some improvement?
Well, certainly our experience of being in contact with women who are outraged. Sometimes the outrage is outbalanced by fear, raw fear in their household, in their community. So for me, the social consciousness building would need to be more deliberate to address these specific issues. If a woman comes to an organization and they are fearful, what do we do? What can we do? We don't have the power of arrest. That's not our job. But do we hold the woman's hand and say, okay, we can help? We, a group of us, will find a way to help to make you secure, because we have to say to the woman, your voice is important. If you can be a witness, if you can report the incident to the police, this is one way of defending your daughter who you do not wish to be raped. I want to agree with Joy, because certainly one of my experiences when the mother was approached by the girl child who kind of knew it was wrong and she didn't want to see the man. And she said, "Tell myself, go on. Me did do it too and me survive. It's just a little sex." So it is a humongous problem, but I don't think we can ever send a message to say we don't know what to do about it. Both JFJ and Joy myself have known, we know well enough to know you cannot ever let that overwhelm you. And so I go back. We find a way to say to young women, in particular the mothers and the family members, that their girl childs have a right. Sometimes they don't even know what the right is. She has a right to defend herself. Her body is her body. So I think we may have to get down to those kind of nitty-gritty issues and confront the mothers and people in the families to help us to get the word across. It's not going to be easy because, as Joyce says, and I am acknowledging, it's very deep-rooted and it is intergenerational. So I would throw that out. The other thing that certainly I have learned is how do we incorporate those persons who are attorneys, who say they're concerned about these things? How do we guide them to say, look here, what they really need is this. If legal aid can't pay you what you think you are worth, just think about whose life you are saving if you are able to provide the legal support for the mother or whoever to go to the police station and to hold her hand through the court process. It may take 5 years. But I don't think we alone in our NGO space, women's rights organization space, can do it all. And I think I would certainly be willing to help challenge the legal fraternity those who are not doing the other non-violent, non-people cases, but those who are in the human rights space and say they're interested in defending women's rights. Let's challenge them, because there's a certain point that we can go. We can't go to court and argue the case. That's not I can't do that anyway. So I just think we need to be prepared to go down to the nitty-gritty, that kind of level. And if necessary, take it one community at a time, or 2 or 3. I mean, Joy IFA Life is very well established in a number of communities. She feels that she knows that there are gaps. Do we start supporting those communities? Yeah, and then use that as an example to say, look, this is what we're able to do in community A, B, and C, and we move to another community. But always making sure that we have some attorneys who are willing to just defend women's rights and children's rights.
Yes. Yeah, please, because I wanted to also answer a question for us, Joy, in terms of from where you sit, the experiences of the girls and the women who benefit from IFA Life. What are their experiences interacting with the justice system from the time of reporting to the police, or if the matter goes before the court? What are some of the experiences that you've had, and have you seen any improvement?
All right, so the first thing that comes to my mind is the fact that most of them are not interested.
Them being the victim survivors.
The survivors, yes. That's not what justice looks like for them.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. One, again, is the fear of it spending forever in the courts, backlash in community. If the community is radical to say, we do not support this kind of behavior from our men. If there are other men not standing up to say that we will support you, that lack of feeling safe, that lack of community and family support is a big barrier to the survivor stepping out to even trying to get support from the legal system. So that's the very first thing I've seen. For those who get past that, we do have a number of situations where if there's a report even made to the police and there's some initial action, it doesn't get sustained for various reasons. Economic, where's the lawyer, which legal system is nearby them if they're in rural Jamaica. They don't have the capacity sometimes to have the conversation to negotiate what path to take. So a lot of them have dropped out of school. There are less than secondary school education, so they don't understand a number of things. And I don't think there's a lot of JFJs around. So we need more, like you say, more spaces where they feel like they can go and someone will sit with them and go through for the long haul.
Yes.
So not that being there is not really an encouragement.
Yeah, and just to clarify for the listeners, Joy, in case some are wondering, yes, it is the responsibility of the prosecution or the prosecutor from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to argue the case before the courts. But there is the important need where attorneys can act as court companions in these matters, where you properly explain what to expect in the judicial process, because while the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, I recall them saying that they do have some support system, it's not enough to do what we're talking about. All right?
And
just to clarify.
Because they have the victim, we also have victim services,
Yes, within the ministry.
Are there within the ministry. But like I said, not enough.
We just said the ministry.
Right, not enough, and doesn't reach the people all over where they are, especially those in rural and inner city communities who need that hand-holding. So that's my experience. We have had the lesser group who have had, their cases go forward and have had the perpetrators taken before the courts and eventually charged and are serving time. So we do have some of those, but I want to say they are in the minority. The quick comment I wanted to have made was the issue of solution. There's a big burden on women, I believe, but I want to highlight, especially in the last 2 weeks, the need for men. This thing cannot be continued to be a combative comparison. Men are upset that we are doing what we're doing and we're protesting and that kind of stuff, because we are supposed to be, it's not all men. And we totally agree. And I'd want to go as far as to say it is not the majority of Jamaican men. So what I would like to see is for that majority of Jamaican men who are upset and who will stand with us and tell the minority men, no go there. You're a dirty old man. Condemn them publicly and stand with us in our marches right across the corporate area. The last week or so, between the issue with the nurses and UTEC and the ones that we did for Thursday in Black, the majority of the people out there were women. We had probably 2 or 3 men. So these men who are all in their emotions of feeling offended by women protesting.
And what about the men, yes?
And asking us about what about the men? What happened to Adam for life? We're saying, stand in the gap. Let your voices be heard, because there's nothing more greater than a man saying to another man, say, listen me, why you do a foolishness? You're going to report you.
And when your brethren talk to you about what him do to him wife and him spouse, you're right, no go there.
The bar talk, the barbershop talk, on social media. When the men said to another man, this is wrong, I believe it will go far away. Right now, that's a big gap, because what we have, is that it remains where almost the woman who is the victim having to justify and cry out, and she not getting the support of the male peer who is said to be having power. I think that is something that we can do in our country. Call on our men and hope that our men will come out publicly and denounce other men and stop getting all emotional that we're being unfair.
Yes.
So
yes, I'm going to. We have to close out in a minute, so I'm going to have the last word to you, Judith, in terms of what is the last solution that you would recommend to our listeners and to our legislators who are listening in on the program.
I would like 100% to endorse what Joyce just said about trying to enroll as many men as we can in the struggle. I would just like to ask her, if we talk after this off the air, where do we start? Do we know which men do we know personally? I'm willing to do that. 1 or 2 or 3 men to start with personally, quiet, and say to them, look here, this is the problem. And we start with 3 men or 5 men or 6 men or wherever they are, because I agree with you, but in the meantime, we can't stop doing the work we have to do. We have to continue doing the work, even though they're quote unquote jealous, because where are the men?
Yes.
So you can call on me, Joy, when you're ready to find a couple of men, and I'm very serious about that.
Yes.
But trust me, I am not going to stop what I'm doing till we find the 100 men to join us.
Yes. Let's get it done. Thank you so much. That's Judith Wedderburn and Joy Crawford. Before we go to the break, we heard, I saw on Observer, Popcorn. Yes, you know me, I would say popcorn, but in respect of his name, I will say Popcorn.
Thank you.
The Angel and Romaine Virgo, they came out saying that, enough is enough. And I know Romaine, he did a song, Nogode, as well. My son loves that song.
Yes.
But we need their sustained action
I'm
and
sorry,
voices.
Romaine's song was Dirty Man.
Dirty Man. Okay, the Nogode, I don't want to mix it up. Thank you, Joy, you are still on here.
Nogode is the E for Life song with Nomads.
Okay, great, beautiful. Thank you so much. So we need more of their voices coming out to say, Nogode, end this. Enough is enough. All right, we take the break.
Football fans, it's the clash to determine Europe's king. When Inter Milan battles PSG in the final of the UEFA Champions League, live on the big screen at Carib 5. Join us on Saturday, May 31 at 2 p.m. for the ultimate match day experience. Brought to you by the Amber Group, Nationwide News Network, and Palace Amusement.
Dumfries, first time!
Big goals, big screens, and big vibes. Tickets are $500 for general admission and $800 for box seats. Limited tickets available, so grab yours today at the Carib 5 box office or online at palaceamusements.com. Feel the thrill of the Champions League final, just like you're in the stadium.
Me say no make them take advantage of you. Nah, 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 yeah. Young girl wanna school, yeah. No follow nobody, 'cause that man where you call you sexy could be twice your daddy. Man, no time rough like greater, plus your mama don't have it. Please me, I beg you, no make them come mess up your body. And you dirty man, leave the people beneath them alone. You dirty man, you know it's wrong. So leave the people beneath them alone. It's a disgrace, man.
I me say no make them take advantage of you. Nah, 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 nah. Hey, young girl wanna school ya, I'm not follow nobody, 'cause that man where I call you sexy could be twice your daddy. No time rough like Greta, plus your mama don't have it. But please me, I beg you, no make them come mess up your body. And you dirty man, leave the people picking them alone. You dirty man, you know it's wrong. So leave the people picking them alone. It's a disgrace, man.
Alright, that is the message endorsed by JFJ today. Dirty man left the people and picking them alone. Yes, and I want all of us who are listening on the program to echo that message. Enough is enough. All right.
All right. So we are switching gears now. We are going to be speaking with Glenroy Murray, the Executive Director of Equality for All Foundation, that would have made a statement over the weekend regarding some actions at a political rally. So I'm going to read the first paragraph of their statement. Equality for All Foundation, formerly JFLAG, expresses our deep disappointment in the use of homophobic slurs at political rallies and strongly condemn the demonstrated willingness of a sitting Member of Parliament and Cabinet Minister, Darrell Vaz, to encourage the playing of a song widely known to advocate for violence against the LGBTQ+ community, persons in Jamaica. In 2025, this represents not only a step backward for our nation's politics, but our country at large. So we are joined by Executive Director of Equality for All Foundation, Glenroy Murray. Glenroy, your immediate comments on what has been happening and an equality statement.
I mean, my immediate feeling is that it seems whenever there's a need to rally the base in a particular kind of way for whatever reasons, there's almost this knee-jerk tendency among some political actors to use our community as a footstool to do that. And I think it's disappointing. I think you have to have more than homophobia. however you want to present it, to offer to your constituents and to your party base. And if that's what you have to offer, I think you do a disservice not only to your party and your politics, but also to the people who deserve more. Research conducted recently, not by, I don't remember which pollster, essentially demonstrated that people's priorities are dealing with crime, dealing with the economy. And so I left watching that video wondering, why was this at all necessary to do? And who does it serve? And isn't there anything better to offer to people?
Glenroy, I think, it's a delay in the video. Thank you so much. And your call, well, you're making several calls in that release. Can you just summarize why the need for an apology and what exactly you expect from the political ombudsman?
Sure. Thank you, Mikhail. So in terms of the calls, we're definitely calling for an apology from the minister himself, Mr. Darrell Vaz, not only to the community who was deeply offended by, once again, being used as a political punching bag, but also to the people of this country. I feel like Jamaicans deserve better than, using that on a political rally to wrap up support. It's completely unnecessary. And it's unbefitting of his station, it's unbefitting of a member of parliament and a sitting member of cabinet. And then further, I think, yes, there is a political code of conduct. And, within that code of conduct, there are sections that very specifically say that that politicians at political events should not be advocating or endorsing violence towards any group or towards any persons. And for me, these kinds of actions flirt with violating that code of conduct already. So I think you're already in breach of something that you as a party agreed to not do. And for that, there needs to be an apology as well. But I think beyond that, it should be made clear by the ombudsman and both political parties that this kind of behavior is unacceptable and that we're going to require more of everybody in our politics. That it's 2025. And we've seen positive shifts in how we treat each other as Jamaicans and positive shifts in attitudes towards the LGBT community here. And it does not look good for a sitting member of parliament to take us backwards.
Yeah, just thank you, Glenroy. Before you leave, just to say that JFJ, we also issued a statement in support of Equality for All Foundation's call, because from where we sit as well, the minister is a lawmaker who should be championing the anti-discrimination legislation that several of us have been calling for. If we look at some of the constitutional amendments that we have also been calling for, is for there to be greater protection when it comes to your freedom from discrimination, where there should be an amendment to the Constitution where you're protected on the basis of your sexual orientation or gender identity. And if the minister is among those charged with that responsibility, what does it say? I have to say, to whom much is given, much is expected. I keep reiterating that particular statement just to put in context. So, Glenroy, as you close out, just a minute, why should Jamaicans care?
I think Jamaicans should care because, there's this old adage that, one day they come for one group and then the next day they'll come for you. At the end of the day, LGBT people in Jamaica are Jamaicans. We are voters. We have the data to back up that assertion, and we deserve just as much respect as anybody, and we do not deserve to have who we are used in denigrating ways on political platforms to score points with your base. And frankly, people deserve more than those little childish approaches.
And empty rhetoric, yes.
Yeah.
Can you play the clip? Perhaps not all are knowledgeable of what we're talking about.
God bless you and carry the word out there. Third term. Run the music, man. No, hold on. You think me can come off of the stage and you don't run chichi, man? I'm mad, you're mad. I'm mad, you're mad.
My crew, my dogs, set rules, set laws. We represent for the lords of yards.
All right, that was the clip. And Glenroy Murray, thank you so much to Aoife for speaking so quickly on it, because no parliamentarian should be uttering rhetoric that could incite violence against a group of Jamaicans, no matter what our thoughts are on the issue of homosexuality, because I know that's where some may be going. The moment a parliamentarian affirms comments that can possibly harm a group of people, it's a problem, and I think we have to expect much more from our leaders. So we have to leave it there. Glenroy Murray, thank you so much for joining the program.
And thanks for the endorsement and support. Have a good one.
I just wanted to make a quick comment in this last minute. Well, firstly, news commentator 1 hour trivia. So we'll reach out to you. We have your contact well saved.
News commentator blocked for about a month.
So we'll reach out to you with your prize. But just to say, I saw a comment in the chat saying, you aren't speaking for all Jamaicans, and you aren't. I don't feel like I'm owed an apology. But I think Mr. Murray was very clear that he was asking for an apology on behalf of the community that was offended, and not on behalf of all Jamaicans who may or may not have been offended by what was said. I think that was fairly clear. But thank you so much for joining us.
But news commentator 1.
Yes.
But the answer was?
Yes, the answer was the Child Development Agency, and that was previously the name for the Child Protection and Family Services Agency.
All right, so that's where we have to leave it. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ.
And I'm Jade Williams, Policy Advocacy and Research Manager at JFJ.
Right. Thank you for listening and have a good week.
Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many, we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or JamaicансForJustice.org.
The people's champion.
What's the standing of the JLP and the PNP in Southeast St. Elizabeth? Southwest